An Hour with Abuelo by Judith Ortiz Kofer. Just 1 hour, una hora, is all I'm asking of you, son. My grandfather is in a nursing home in Brooklyn, and my mother wants me to spend some time with him since the doctors say that he doesn't have too long to go now. I don't have much time left of my summer vacation, and there's a stack of books next to my bed I've got to read if I'm going to get into the AP English class I want. I'm going stupid in some of my classes, and Mr. Williams, the principal at Central, said that if I passed some reading tests, he'd let me move up. Besides, I hate the place, the old people's home, especially the way it smells like industrial strength ammonia and other stuff I won't mention, since it turns my stomach. And really, the abuelo always has a lot of relatives visiting him. So I've gotten out of going out there, except at Christmas, when a whole van load of grandchildren are herded over there to give him gifts and a hug. We all make it quick and spend the rest of the time in the recreation area, where they play checkers and stuff, and some of the old people's games. And I catch up on back issues of Modern Maturity. I'm not picky. I'll read almost anything. So it sounds like the narrator is visiting his grandfather, perhaps in a nursing home, and he doesn't really like going there. He says it smells like ammonia, which is a really strong cleaning product, and other things. What other things could he be talking about? Anyway, after my mother nags me for about a week, I let her drive me to Golden Years. What do you think Golden Years is? Could it be the name of the nursing home? She drops me off in front. She wants me to go in alone and have a good time talking to Abuelo. I tell her to be back in 1 hour or I'll take the bus back to Patterson. Do you think his mother's happy with that? She squeezes my hand and says, "Gracias, hijo," in a choked up voice like I'm doing her a big favor. I get depressed the minute I walk into the place. They line up the old people in wheelchairs in the hallway as if they were about to be raced to the finish line by orderlies who don't even look at them when they push them here and there. If you look at the bottom, hijo means son. I'm sure a lot of you already know that. So why would he be depressed walking into this place and seeing all these old people? He says it looks as though they're all lined up, ready to start a race. And the orderlies have put them there. What are orderlies? Orderlies are people who help the residents of a nursing home, almost like a nursing staff, maybe like a nurse's aide type thing. I walk fast to room 10, Abuelo's suite. He is sitting up in his bed, writing with a pencil in one of those old-fashioned black hardback notebooks. It has the outline of the island of Puerto Rico on it. I slide into the hard vinyl chair by his bed. He sort of smiles, and the lines on his face get deeper, but he doesn't say anything. Since I'm supposed to talk to him, I say, "What are you doing, Abuelo? Writing the story of your life?" It's supposed to be a joke, but he answers, "Sí. How did you know, Arturo?" So now we know the narrator's name is Arturo. And he's sliding into his chair and he's going to sit there while the grandfather is in bed writing. And he's sort of making a joke. But it turns out that the grandfather says, "Yes, I am writing a story of my life." His name is Arturo too. I was named after him. I don't really know my grandfather. His children, including my mother, came to New York and New Jersey, where I was born, and he stayed on the island until my grandmother died. Then he got sick, and since nobody could leave their jobs to go take care of him, they brought him to this nursing home in Brooklyn. I see him a couple of times a year, but he's always surrounded by his sons and daughters. So now we know where the narrator, Arturo, was born. He was born in New Jersey. And then it seems like the grandfather got sick and nobody could take care of him. So they decided to put him in a nursing home. How do you feel about that? Do you think you could do that to one of your loved ones? My mother tells me that Don Arturo had once been a teacher back in Puerto Rico, but had lost his job after the war. Then he became a farmer. She's always saying in a sad voice, "Ay, bendito, What a waste of a fine mind. Then she usually shrugs her shoulders and says, Así es la vida. That's the way life is. It sometimes makes me mad that the adults I know just accept whatever is thrown at them because that's the way things are. Not for me. I go after what I want. So you're learning a little bit more now. It seems like the grandfather's name is actually Don Arturo, and he was a teacher in Puerto Rico, but he lost his job and then he became a farmer. And his daughter, Arturo Jr.'s mother, thinks it was such a waste of a fine mind. Anyway, Abuelo is looking at me like he was trying to see into my head, but he doesn't say anything. Since I like stories, I decide I may as well ask him if he'll read me what he wrote. I look at my watch. I've already used up 20 minutes of the hour I promised my mother. Abuelo starts talking in his slow way. He speaks what my mother calls book English. He taught himself from a dictionary, and his words sound stiff, like he's sounding them out in his head before he says them. With his children, he speaks Spanish, and that funny book English with us grandchildren. I'm surprised that he's still so sharp because his body is shrinking like a crumpled up brown paper sack with some bones in it. But I can see from looking into his eyes that the light is still on in there. So this slide is basically telling us that Abuelo speaks Spanish, but he tries to speak this book English to his grandchildren. Why do you think he chooses to speak English? This is sort of like a proper English. Why do you think he chooses to speak English with his grandchildren? Could it be that that's what his grandchildren speak? And then the narrator says, because his body is shrinking like a crumpled up brown paper sack with some bones in it. Think about that imagery there. I see the word like. What type of literary device is that? His body is shrinking like a crumpled up brown paper sack. If you said simile, you're correct. But I can see from looking in his eyes that the light is still on in there. Does he literally have a light on in his head? What does the author mean by that? It is a short story, Arturo, the story of my life. It will not take very much time to read it. I have time, Abuelo. I'm a little embarrassed that he saw me looking at my watch. Yes, hijo, you have spoken the truth. La verdad. You have much time. La verdad means the truth. Abuelo reads, I loved words from the beginning of my life. In the campo, where I was born, one of 7 sons, there were few books. Campo means countryside. My mother read them to us over and over, the Bible, the stories of Spanish conquistadors, and of pirates that she had read as a child and brought with her from the city of Mayaguez. I'm sorry, I'm not really sure how to say that. Mayaguez. That was before she married my father, a coffee bean farmer, and she taught us words from the newspaper that a boy on a horse brought every week to her. She taught each of us how to write on a slate with chalks that she ordered by mail every year. We used those chalks until they were so small that you lost them between your fingers. So what do you think about older Abuelo's mother? Do you think she valued education? She read to her children over and over, and she taught them how to write. So I believe she really valued education. Do you think they had a lot of money living in the countryside? He was one of 7 sons, which means there were 8 of them, and they had few books. So I'm sort of inferring here that they probably didn't have a lot of money. I always wanted to be a writer and a teacher. With my heart and my soul, I knew that I wanted to be around books all of my life. And so, against the wishes of my father, who wanted all his sons to help him on the land, she sent me to high school in Mayaguez. For 4 years, I boarded with a couple she knew. I paid my rent in labor, and I ate vegetables I grew myself. I wore my clothes until they were thin as parchment. But I graduated at the top of my class. My whole family came to see me that day. My mother brought me a beautiful goyabera, a white shirt made of the finest cotton and embroidered by her own hands. I was a happy young man. So you can use your context clues in there. Figure out what Goyabara means. It says a white shirt. Use the clues that are there. Okay, so the mother valued education. The father, not so much. He wanted the boys to work on the land. But it says, she sent me to school. But he worked through school, right? He paid his rent in labor, meaning he worked wherever he had to live, he worked there. So maybe he did odd jobs around that property. And he grew his own vegetables, and he wore his clothes until they were as thin as parchment. If you know anything about baking or cooking, parchment paper is something that you can line your cookie sheets with. It's like a real thin white paper. So that's what he's talking about there, parchment. But he graduated, and he was happy. In those days, you could teach in a country school with a high school diploma. So I went back to my mountain village and got a job teaching all grades in a little classroom built by the parents of my students. I had books sent to me by the government. I felt like a rich man, although the pay was very small. I had books, all the books I wanted. I taught my students how to read poetry and plays and how to write them. We made up songs and put on shows for the parents. It was a beautiful time for me. So this sounds like the highlight of his life. Okay, he was able to teach, even without a college degree. He was able to go back to his village and become a teacher in a little school built by the parents. And he says on this slide, he felt like a rich man. He didn't get paid very much, but he was rich because he had books, all the books he wanted. So in his mind, he was rich because he had lots of books. Then the war came, and the American president said that all Puerto Rican men would be drafted. I wrote to our governor and explained that I was the only teacher in the mountain village. I told him that the children would go back to the fields and grow up ignorant if I could not teach them their letters. I said that I thought I was a better teacher than a soldier. The governor did not answer my letter. I went into the U.S. Army. I told my sergeant that I could be a teacher in the Army. I could teach all the farm boys their letters so that they could read the instructions on the ammunition boxes and not blow themselves up. Okay, so on this slide, there's a dilemma here. He's a teacher and he loves it, but he's also a Puerto Rican. And the president said that during the war, all the Puerto Rican men would be drafted, meaning they had to go fight. He tried to explain to the governor that he needed to be here and teach, but the governor didn't listen. So he went to the Army, and he still wants to teach in the Army. So there's a little bit of humor at the end here. He says, I can teach these boys in the Army their letters so they don't blow themselves up, so that they know how to use this ammunition. The sergeant said I was too smart for my own good and gave me a job cleaning latrines. Do you know what a latrine is? It's a bathroom. He said to me, there is reading material for you there, scholar. Read the writing on the walls. I spent the war mopping floors and cleaning toilets. Oh no. Kind of sounds like he thought the sergeant thought that Arturo thought he was better than everybody else. But I don't think that was the case. I think he just truly wanted to help and wanted to teach people. When I came back to the island, things had changed. You had to have a college degree to teach school, even the lower grades. My parents were sick. 2 of my brothers had been killed in the war. The others had stayed in Nueva York. Nueva means new, so we know that means New York. I was the only one left to help the old people. I became a farmer. I married a good woman who gave me many good children. I taught them all how to read and write before they started school. Abuelo then puts the notebook down on his lap and closes his eyes. So on this slide, he returns from the war, but things are different now. It seems as though he can't teach anymore because he doesn't have that college degree. His parents are sick. 2 of his brothers had been killed. The other ones were in New York. So he was the only one left to help the old people. So then he became the farmer. Así es la vida is the title of my book, he says in a whisper, almost to himself. Maybe he's forgotten that I'm there. For a long time, he doesn't say anything else. I think that he's sleeping, but then I see that he's watching me through half-closed lids. maybe waiting for my opinion of his writing. I'm trying to think of something nice to say. I liked it and all, but not the title. Why do you think he doesn't like the title? Do you remember that así es la vida means that's the way life goes? And he doesn't like that. Young Arturo thinks that if you don't like something, you go and change it. You make your own success. So that's probably why he doesn't like this title. And I think that he could have been a teacher if he had wanted to bad enough. Nobody is going to stop me from doing what I want with my life. I'm not going to let la vida get in my way. I want to discuss this with him, but the words are not coming into my head in Spanish just yet. I'm about to ask him why he didn't keep fighting to make his dream come true when an old lady in hot pink running shoes sort of appears at the door. Who could this be? And why do you think grandfather didn't push and didn't go to college and push for that dream? Do you think he cared about the old people and the family that he had to take care of a little bit more than pursuing his dreams? Something to be said for loyalty. So who's at the door here? Let's see. She is wearing a pink jogging outfit too. The world's oldest marathoner, I say to myself. She calls out to my grandfather in a flirty voice. Yoo-hoo, Arturo! Remember what day this is? It's poetry reading day in the rec room. You promised us you'd read your new one today. I see my abuelo perking up almost immediately. He points to his wheelchair, which is hanging like a huge metal bat in the open closet. He makes it obvious that he wants me to get it. I put it together, and with Mrs. Pink Running Shoes' help, we get him in it. Then he says in a strong, deep voice I hardly recognize, Arturo, get that notebook from the table, please. I hand him another map of the island notebook. This one is red. On it, in big letters, it says, Poemas de Arturo. Poems of Arturo. I start to push him toward the rec room, but he shakes his finger at me. Arturo, look at your watch now. I believe your time is over. He gives me a wicked smile. Then, with her pushing the wheelchair, maybe a little too fast, they roll down the hall. Do you think he wanted Arturo to leave, young Arturo? Interesting. Now he has a lady friend around. Maybe he wants Arturo to go. He is already reading from his notebook, and she's making bird noises. I look at my watch, and the hour is up to the minute. I can't help but think that my abuelo has been timing me. It cracks me up. I walk slowly down the hall toward the exit sign. I want my mother to have to wait a little. I don't want her to think that I'm in a hurry or anything. So what do you think here? Young Arturo goes, and he doesn't really want to spend the hour, but he does. And then old Arturo spends the hour with young Arturo, but do you think old Arturo was maybe counting down the minutes too? Because he had something to look forward to. He had the lady in the pink shoes and pink jogging outfit coming to his door and taking him down to read poetry. He was looking forward to that. So perhaps young Arturo didn't really want to be there, but perhaps older Arturo didn't really want him to be there either. They both had something else that they had in mind.